For more on the war and the implications of all of this aid, we turn to former Assistant Vice Chief of Staff in the U.S. Air Force, retired Lieutenant General Richard Newton. Thank you for being here this morning. Ukraine has been very vocal about the need for more air defense systems. It sounds like NATO will be ramping up aid in that form. How much of a difference will this make, and is it coming at the right point?
Well, good morning, Marni. I think it's going to be a difference maker, as you allude to in your question. President Biden last week requested $37 billion in aid to Ukraine. $21.5 billion of that would actually go to military capabilities to include more advanced air defense systems and so forth. And then the other $14 or $15 billion go towards humanitarian aid. Both are going to be critical in order to sustain Ukraine through this winter. As the Ukrainian civilian Maria alluded to, it's quite harsh, but also demonstrates significant resolve. And as the NATO secretary just said, that Putin is weaponizing winter. It's critical that we provide aid, but we also provide the political and the diplomatic resolve as well to get the Ukrainians through this crucial winter time.
Well, and of note, and on that same topic, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken expected to announce the U.S. is going to be helping Ukraine to restore power, to help them repair the infrastructure. But there are challenges in an ongoing war as many of these large cities take on shelling from Russian forces. What are some of the complications of that process to restore infrastructure given the status?
Well, it's an extraordinary challenge. The lights stay on about 1/3 of the time in Kyiv and in Odessa, across the major cities of Ukraine where the major population centers are. Not only does that affect civilians, however, it also affects other military aspects of the Ukrainian capabilities and current, command and control facilities and, bases of operation and so forth. So it's not just civilians, which are atrocities enough, but it also the ability for Ukraine to continue and take the fight to Russia. But this is very important that we stand by Ukraine right now as they show extraordinary resolve through these last 9 months. As Secretary Blinken said, we need to provide the monies, but also the capabilities, as well as to make sure that we can provide them through pipelines and so forth and supply chains, oil and gas, to get them through the winter. Because I believe Putin is indeed, as we said, weaponizing winter. I believe he's going to shore up his forces. Those 300,000 men he called up a couple months or so ago could be trained to some modicum of capability and then resupply his vehicles and tanks and so forth. What I think is going to be likely a spring offensive in 2023.
And it wasn't long ago that the Ukrainian forces were celebrating taking back Kherson, and now we're hearing that Russian forces may be remobilizing in that area. What does that signal to you?
Well, it signals to me Russia resolve. It's Ukrainians, their resolve is extraordinary, and the Russians won't quit. And that's where you get into this stalemate on the battlefield, which again creates those atrocities and really does not bode well for the Ukrainian civilians. But it also says that I don't think Russia has the capability to reverse the courses that we've seen on the battlefield, certainly the last several months, much less take back Kherson. But they can agitate the Russian forces or disregard the Ukrainian forces. They can prevent the Ukrainian forces then perhaps moving on into the southeast part of Crimea or into the eastern part of Donbass and so forth. I do believe, though, as I said earlier, Marni, that Putin is waiting to muster his forces for that spring offensive. And that will be a critical time in the phase of this war. And really, will he be able to do it? The jury's still out on that, in my opinion. Yeah. But that's going to be more, again, horrors, I believe, for the Ukrainian people to withstand.
So much blood has already been shed. And we've now learned Russia has postponed that meeting with the U.S. to talk about the New START treaty, which was the last remaining nuclear arms treaty between Moscow and Washington. Does this indicate a breakdown in diplomatic relations between the U.S. and Russia at this critical juncture?
No, you allude to the New START treaty that was really put together under the Obama administration in 2011. When I was my first assignment on the Joint Chiefs of Staff, I actually dealt with strategic arm reduction talks with the Russians. And so I've seen this many times. It's ploys, it's other aspects of them trying to kind of get us off our game a little bit. But what transpired was they canceled today the bilateral consultative commission alluding to the New START reduction arms control treaty discussions that were supposed to go through next week. It's a delay tactic. We've seen this before. I'm not trying to, make it a small thing or not, but I believe they will get back to the table. We haven't actually had these consultative discussions since October of 2021 as a result of the pandemic. But again, part of the Ukrainian calculus with Russia obviously on the heels and Putin on his heels, yes, they're pulling this out of their diplomatic playbook.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.